Swiss Army knife, that's the one. So what I'm using is the flat of the blade, just to get rid of any of the compound. Try and make it as flat as you can without gouging the surface. This is quite a flat blade really, so it does quite a good job of getting rid of anything that's on flat surfaces. And my other blade there is a curved edge, so that's not particularly useful in this application. If you're interested in PlayStation 3s or modding or anything like that, I'm going to give a recommendation to watching a YouTuber named Modded Warfare. He does very comprehensive tutorials on both PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4. He's a font of all knowledge really, got loads of videos and very detailed. Yeah, so definitely check that out. Okay, cement removed, thermal compound removed, so that is now ready to go on that once it's cleared. Just going to use some isopropanol again. You don't have to use isopropanol, in fact I only got this recently because I tried doing some BGA work, but if you've got Zippo lighter fluid or anything like that, that works fairly well. It does leave a residue if you use a lot of it, but generally for doing this kind of work, a small amount of it will be more than enough to break into the compound and get it taken off. Just don't douse it in it really. But I've used that for years and it's worked fine for me. Okay, so that's the top of the die exposed. This is an early die because it's quite large. Top tip, if you've got problems with your PlayStation 3 and you've taken this heat spreader off on your unit and this black glue is spread out all over the top of the die, over the top of the chip, then it's most likely that the small balls of solder that go underneath this die and connect it to the board have probably melted, and that's why you're not getting a good functioning PlayStation anymore. Not only, so you've got balls under this, and you've also got balls under the chip itself. Commonly, a lot of people just reball or think that they're reballing under here, but actually, if you put a lot of heat into this, especially without the heat spreader, you will end up burning out this die and the solder balls that are underneath it. So, yeah, definitely get a temperature-controlled system so that you can do a ramp of the chip and then ramp it back down according to whether you've got leaded solder or unleaded solder. That's top tip there. But obviously that kind of kit is expensive, so Okay, so get rid of the rest of this glue. You can use your nail on this one, it will just peel away. Easy as that. And the same for the heat spreader as well. Back into picture. Yeah, so I'm just using my nail to remove all of the glue around the edge here. Is that the car beeping? The dog's outside, right? Sorry, I had a beep. Either a beep or the dog chirping. Is it, okay. Yeah, so that was Mrs. Spock Says Hi. Say hello, Mrs. Spock Says Hi. So what I'm using is a knife now because that'll speed up the process. If you're not confident using a knife on the top of this, I wouldn't try it, but I've owned this Swiss Army knife for years. I know its ways. So this is where he gouges it. Takes a nice big chunk out the top, turns off the video and says, I'm going to set fire to this. Won't be the first time. Okay, so almost there. Yeah, I've only really recently got into PlayStation 3 because I couldn't really afford to buy one. But the community is quite large. You've got loads of people who are interested in modding and, you know, messing around with the firmware and Linux and stuff like that. There's with Linux now, there's a Bits and Bobs by Rennie or something like that. I can't remember his channel name. I'll link it in the description. But he's working on a Linux distribution for PlayStation 3, which is supposed to free up the I think it's part of the GPU or some part of the RAM, or optimize it in some way so that it runs faster than the original sort of other OS option that you had with PlayStation 3. So yeah, definitely check that out. I'm not sure where he is with it. To be honest, the guy's well over my head. He's a coding master. So we deal with hardware here. Okay, so I'm being a bit pedantic now. Yeah, quit that. I may cut it out of the video or not, depends on how I feel. So anyway, that's done. So lastly, I'm going to take off the cement off the top of the RSX. Be gentle when you come to do it, because you're playing with the chips there. Okay. Okay, so I want another really cool tool from the Swiss Army knife. Plug in Swiss Army knife, I should get donations from them or something. Give me a free Swiss Army knife, I'll have one. Try my short one, that was a bit better on that. Obviously, if you don't have Swiss Army knife or whatever, Stanley blade is a very good alternative. Just take the blade out, just go at it with that. So this particular unit didn't have any hardware problems, and the warranty seal was fully intact, so I'm the first one to get into it. Some of the problems you can get with this, like yellow light of death, red light of death, that sort of thing. With the yellow light of death, you'll find that these capacitors, 1, 2, 3, 4, that drive the chips can fail over time, and what that means is when they need the power they don't get it, and often that's when it turns on. It won't have overheated in that time, straight away you'll get that yellow light of death. It just says, I haven't got any power. So there are videos on YouTube for replacing these capacitors, the NEC token ones. Yeah, but just thought I'd mention it in case you have that problem yourself. You can get replacement NEC token capacitors, but the problem with doing that is that they're quite a large capacitor to replace. So if you did put original parts back in, you would need hot air reflow station, soldering station, excuse me, to do it, and that would be, you know, more money again. So there is an option to replace them with smaller tantalum capacitors, and that'll help you out, sort of on a par with that sort of size right there. And what you do is you'll grind out some of the pad, and because on the inside and the outside there's quite an overlap of trace that you can solder to as that's, you know, underneath there, so that you can fit essentially different size capacitors physically, you know, different packages onto those boards. Okay. So that is pretty much done. Use a toothbrush to get rid of all the big bits of debris. Right. One last piece to clean, internal off this, and then we're done. Ready to reassemble with brand new thermal compound. Lovely. Right then, get rid of the small bits of rubber. To be honest, you may want to leave them on, you may want to take the rubber off. That's, you know, it's your choice really, but I like to take it off because you get a better contact on the top of the die. Now, I'm sure it has properties for, you know, helping with balancing on the top of this die, but really you've got only two contact patches for the heatsink that goes on top of it, so, and they're equally, you know, equidistant from each other, so you won't have any real problems with it rocking because you can only tighten them up certain amount anyway. So unless you go and stick it on there upside down or something like that, I don't think you're really going to have any problems, and this rubber really isn't going to make much difference. Okay. Right, there's a lot of talk about how much thermal compound that you should put on. I used to work with computers once upon a time. I used to assemble them on a production line, and we were told to put a very tiny amount on there. Now whether that was because the company didn't particularly want to spend a great deal on thermal compound or not, I don't know. And this is my chewed version of my Arctic Silver. My dog got it. Bugger. But yeah, they said to put only a small tiny bit on there. Now that stuck with me forever really, and that's the way I work. So I'll only put in sort of maybe half a pea, and just on top, just like that, real small. Again, oh, you totally missed that, so I will put that right on there so you can see. There we are. So yeah, I mean that looks a lot bigger than it really is actually, but just to give you an idea, there it is. It's a very small amount. And that will be enough. Now Arctic Silver, I believe, and don't quote me on it, it's electrically conductive. So, you know, it's best not to put too much on. So, yeah, in keeping with that, I won't. Tiny little touch. All in one spot. It does sort of string up a little bit when you're lifting it off the die. Just sort of pop that back in there as best you can, because you don't want a string that comes off to the side, because it's not going to spread quite so properly as it would if it was just one dot, and then you might end up with a bit of a squirt coming out, touching here, there and everywhere, and then you've got an electrical short somewhere. Nightmare. Okay. Right, so that's that done. I pop the heat spreaders back on the top. Don't worry about pushing them down, you know, and putting your finger through the board or anything like that. Just pop them on top so they're in place. The action of attaching the heat sinks to the top will adequately disperse your thermal compound underneath. And just one last bit on the top. Not too worried about how much you put on the top of here, because you know it's a heat spreader and you're not getting any shorts on that. Okay, maybe a bit too much there, but yeah, that should be fine. Okay. Cool. So, my board is about ready to be reassembled. A little bit of cleaning to do on this heatsink, so I'll leave that go.